hey, this is Chris, Infinite Realities, and I'm not driving this one. This one we have a special guest host for our very special guests. So, Jennie, I'm going to toss it over to you now.
Hi, I'm Jennie Law. I am a comics librarian and librarian in general. And today we're with our friend Andy Runton, the creator of Owly. Hey, Andy.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. It's funny because normally we're doing kids programs together. So I'm really excited to ask you some process questions and background questions and things about that are like maybe kind of like grown-up questions.
Yeah, sure. It sounds great.
Yeah, because it's so funny because we just are usually singing and making crafts together at cons.
Well, when you're trying to entertain a lot of little kids, you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving. You got to talk a lot. You got to do like all the songs and everything like that. So.
And then there's always that one kid that takes the draw along to a dark place.
No, yeah, he doesn't. Usually it's a he, and he doesn't know how to really. Yeah, he just has something he wants to tell us, and he's going to tell us no matter what.
I'm glad. Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting child psychological things that have happened in our panels. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, for several years now, Andy and I have done something called the Great Owly Hootenanny at Dragon Con and then at Heroes Con. And it usually involves songs and crafts, and Andy shows how Owly is drawn. And then he's been doing... you've been doing like make a comic with the audience.
Sure. Sure.
Times.
Yeah, we just again when it's you have to imagine this is in the middle of a convention and everybody's there and the kids are hyped up and the parents are exhausted, and so we're trying to keep everybody kind of entertained. And so yeah, we do a lot of drawing. I show them how to draw Owly, and then we draw all kinds of stuff, and then I show them how to draw a comic. And so that's what we do. So.
Okay, so let's get into some hard-hitting questions.
All right.
Where did Owly come from?
Well, so when I went to college, I lived at home because I went to Georgia Tech, which is just down the road here in Atlanta, and I commuted. And I was studied industrial design, which is it's in the architecture school, or it was back then. Actually, now it's in the design school. Design has gotten much more popular. But what happened is that we used to stay up all night a lot of times to finish projects. And so if you can imagine this, I'm living at home. I have a project that's due at 5 p.m. or sometimes 8 p.m. the next day, and I don't go to sleep. And so I stay up super late, and I leave my mom a little note that I'm going to be up late, and this is what they look like. If you can see it, it's a little Post-it note. But do you see that little guy that's in the corner there? And this is from, wow, I don't know, 95 around that time. You can see Owly there too. That's after he'd actually met Wormy for the first time.
There's Wormy.
So, but you can see Wormy's in there. He's barely there. But I've got tons of these. But that's the thing, is that these are the little notes I would leave for my mom and said, hey, I don't need to get up until 10, so don't worry about me, So I would go to bed at 2, 3 o'clock. I get up at 10 or get up much later than that. And so that's where he came from. I used to draw that little owl all the time. And I always wanted to do comics, but I could never draw people. And I didn't really know what to draw. And so one day I was like, what if I did a comic with that little owl? And that's it. That's where Owly comes from.
So did you start with mini comics, or did you start with your full-on first story that became your first?
Yeah, no, I started with mini comics. Let me show you. I've actually got one of the early ones here. Let me see. Yeah. Sorry, they're actually it's in a board. All right, so this is the first Owly mini comic right here. This is one of 5 that I made. That's it. So I made more of these later, but this one, I hadn't drawn the Owly in my own style yet. I had just kind of designed it in this funky way. And so it has the first Owly story in it. And it's just a 16-page graphic novel, 16-page little mini comic. And the idea was that I was going to sell these. And if you can imagine this, so I have a $3 price tag on this. And it costs me, I think it costs around $3.50 to make. And I didn't even make the $3. I actually would sell it to Top Shelf to sell at conventions for $1.50. So I lost $2 on every mini comic. That's the way that mini comics work. And so, yeah. And then after I did that one, I did this one, which is the first story in Owly the Way Home. But this is the first version of it. And it's a 50-page mini comic, but you can see it doesn't really sit well, you know. So it would sit on the table and it's starting to open up, and I realized I needed to try to draw longer stories. If I was going to draw longer stories, I need to do something else, and so I had to get it really published, because when you're trying to staple this many pieces of paper together, it doesn't go well.
So you were constructing them all the actual books yourself as well?
Yeah, all
were you
myself.
just using like the long stapler? And
long stapler.
Sewing?
I printed. I didn't do any sewing. I didn't know about that at the time. I really should have done sewing, because it would have been easier. What happened with the stapler is you would mess up a lot of times, and so I would have to redo the cover. And so the cover is just 8.5 by 11 piece of paper done inkjet. You know, so it's just inkjet printed, and then the interior was either photocopied or laser printed in the case of those first ones. So each one took a long time, and this one doesn't have a price on it because I didn't know what I was going to do. But I think we ended up selling this one for about $5, and I also lost money on this one. So, but that's how mini comics works. But it was great to see the story all together. That was what was really fun about it.
So as you developed the character of Owly, were you inspired by any other children's characters, maybe that are animals that you've read throughout your life or that you know about, or just seeing owls in nature? What inspired you, character-wise?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I don't really know all the stuff that went into my Owly, but I had this book as a kid, and this is my copy. It's called Owl at Home, and it is really sad. It is really sad. So there's a story in here, and the owl wants tea, but he doesn't have any water. And so he has to think about all these sad things so that he'll cry and get water for it to make tea with. And it's horribly sad. So he starts thinking about socks that don't have their other sock, and chairs that are, let's see if I can find it. Chairs that don't have one of their legs. Oh yeah. Yes, but if you can see, he's so sad. He's trying to make tears.
So
He's got these chairs. Anyways, I think but I read this stuff. I loved this as a kid, and I think that it just kind of all got inside of me. But I think that, you know, I loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the black and white versions. I loved Calvin and Hobbes. I loved all kinds of cartoons, Looney Tunes, and everything like that, and Disney stuff. I loved everything, so I brought all of it in there. I brought it all in.
Mm-hmm. And so now you are actually, your first Long Way Home has been republished by Scholastic. That's right.
Mm-hmm,
and you've you've colored it and added some words.
Yeah. So I actually, this is the promo copy, but what we did is, this is what Owly looks like now. So it's full color. And so what we did is we added a few words so that, because the one thing about Owly is that it was always a silent comic. But what I found over time was that when parents would try to read Owly to their kids, or if kids were older, they would stumble on not having any words. They needed that little bit of a guideline, little kind of like bouncing ball, to help them through the story. And so what we've ended up with is in the stories now, Wormy actually can speak both languages, And so he speaks in symbols and in words. And so it's like he's bilingual. And a lot of the other animals are bilingual too. And so it makes it easier for everybody to understand it. And also all the color really helps it pop. I'm really excited about the new versions.
So Owly's the only one that doesn't really talk
Owly doesn't talk. Yeah, Owly doesn't talk at all.
Well, I'm glad to have that preserved. I always liked his symbols, so I'm glad that stayed.
Yeah, that's his own special language, and Owly's gotten a real. That's just who he is. I could never imagine him talking, and so this way he never has to talk. He'll never have a real voice, the way the other animals do.
So you are very well known for when you sign books, you put in little owlies and sometimes wormies, and you often give them costumes of the person's choice.
I do that.
I think I have a one where Owly is Batman. How did you teach yourself to draw clothes for an owl?
So this comes into that fact that, so the other one I did for you was Owly is a gnome because you love gnomes.
Yeah.
And so one of the downsides of not being able to draw people is that I was trying to draw things. Like I would try to draw, the G.I. Joes or whatever. And I would have I knew how to draw all their clothes, but when it came to their faces, I just couldn't get it right. And the same with Star Wars characters or anything else, but I always loved to draw those as a kid, and I always loved costumes and everything like that. So what I did is imagine that Owly is it's Halloween, and Owly's going to dress up, and so what does he need to dress up as that? And so if it's, depending on what it is, I just add all the little accessories that he needs, and it's fun because I don't have to worry about drawing the people. And I can draw all the other stuff in there. And it's really fun to do that.
So I know that your people are probably fine, but like your standards, you just don't like them. But I'm keep getting like smudged faces in like horror movies.
Yeah, a little blank, just a circle.
Burn marks.
No, the funny thing is I've actually, people will still come up to me at conventions and they'll say like, hey, can you draw my son with Owly? And I'll be like, I'll try. I don't, I'm not a caricature artist. I can't, but it comes across okay, but it just, I wasn't really happy with it. In fact, if you really look at a lot of my people, they look kind of like Wormy with a nose, that's kind of, it's kind of how they look. I mean, it's fine. It's passable, but it wasn't, I couldn't get the kind of motion that I was looking for. I couldn't capture that thing. Maybe I was just, the thing is about a lot of people struggle with people, faces especially, and that was my problem because I can draw hands and stuff like that, but faces, and the problem is that we look at faces all day. That's what we look at. And so we are very in tune with what faces are supposed to look like. And so you're very judgmental after a certain point. As a kid, you're very judgmental that this doesn't look like a real person. And so I just stopped. I mean, a lot of people just keep going with it, but I could never get it right, so.
Well, I think, you have such a menagerie of animals that you do so well. I think you're fine without people.
Yeah, it works out okay.
Have you ever thought about incorporating like the Peanuts, or like Muppet Babies where you just have the legs of a human?
Yeah, I actually took it out of the Scholastic version, but in the, I'm trying to think if it's in here. Yeah, so this is actually the mini comic version of the Bittersweet Summer, which is the second story in the Owly the Way Home. And this, I actually found a way to glue it. But this is all handmade, right? And so it looks like a real graphic novel, but it's not. And so, this is the one, I forgot which one I had. This is the one I signed to my grandmother and grandfather. They passed away, but so I got the book back. So, but this is in 2004. But in this story, one of the hummingbirds gets abducted, and you never really know why or who he got abducted by. And there's actually a person. It's hard to see, but there's this person that shows up, and they are like, but the thing is that that's all you ever see is a silhouette. There's another one. Oh, okay. So down here, their foot is coming out the door. I don't know if you can see that. It's like creak, and then yeah. So their foot is coming out. So I considered it, but after this, they never show up again. Yeah. And so the funny thing was, is I was like, I don't want people. I don't want people. I want it to be a little bit, because I thought about, I love Winnie the Pooh, right? And Christopher Robinson, Winnie the Pooh, and it's not a problem. But I want Owly's world to be like this little secret world that's in the forest and it's just there, So, yeah. So I decided not to use people. So.
I mean, I love it. I was just really curious. And I think that's perfectly people shaped. So you did a good job on that shadow.
I did okay with a person silhouette. That's about all I could do. So no, I mean, I could do it, but for me, it just felt like there's enough stories like that. This one is a special thing with Owly, and so all his people and everything like that.
Yeah.
No humans necessary.
Yeah. I love Owly, and we became friends because we're local to each other, and I picked up your book, and then we just started talking. So we've known each other for a really long time. And so that A Time to Be Brave, that title, is something that I use as a little mantra. And I know that I know the books often impart lessons to kids. How do you go about constructing those lessons?
It is tough. So writing a book is really tough. And when I was again, I went to school to be a designer. I don't have any kind of training to be a storyteller. I mean, the only storytelling training I have is everything that everybody else got in high school, and, writing your own little stories for English class. That's it. So when it came to writing my own comics, I didn't know what to do. I was really stuck. I had some ideas, but they were kind of silly, and so I started reading a lot of books about writing, and I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell, who he's a real his whole thing is the hero's journey. It's you see it in a lot of Star Wars stuff and all kinds of myths. He basically researched myths across human history and found that there were a lot of similarities that crossed every culture and everything like that, about like somebody has to fight nature, somebody has to go through this horrible trial, a coming of age story. All of these things have been kind of passed down through the years, and they're the basis of just about all the stories that we still see out there. And one of the things that he talks about a lot is the fact that after the hero has gone through the journey, they have changed in some way. So they've learned something. They're not the same person as they were at the beginning. So think about Luke at the beginning of Star Wars versus Luke at the end of Star Wars. There's a definite change there, and so that's the thing that's important, is you've got this change that happens. And so after a while, I had to make sure that Owly did that at the end of this journey, even though he's kind and caring, he still needs to learn something in that process. And so that's where a lot of this stuff happens. I have Owly, and then Time to Be Brave, for instance, is that's on your, I'm pointing to it, it's on your shelf right there. But but it's a story about Owly and Wormy, and they meet a little possum.
Here it is.
And Wormy thinks it's a dragon, and he's scared of it and everything like that. And the funny thing is that Wormy, the possum actually gets stuck in this little fence that Owly makes to protect a tree. And that kind of actually happened to me. There was my neighbor has a deck, and there were all these stray cats that were hanging all around. And they would hide underneath his deck, and they would just kind of stalk all the little birds. And so we put up this little fence underneath the deck. Like, I actually snuck over to my neighbors and put that up. Like, he didn't know about it. It was like this metal kind of thing. And I just kind of used a stapler and put it up there. and it was kind of a rickety fence, but it's very similar to the one in the book. And what happened is I was outside one day and just heard this weird noise. It was this kind of like creaking, and I took my flashlight and I looked, and there was a possum stuck on that little fence. And so here was this thing that I had put to protect the animals, right? And this little guy was stuck. And so luckily I was able to walk over. He would just kind of, it wasn't really poking into him or anything. It was just kind of, he couldn't get his back legs out because the hole was too small. And so I was able to go over there and bend it out, and he just walked away. That was it. And it was the sweetest thing. But all I had to do then was think, what if that had happened to Owly? He would be crushed that something that he put for good ended up hurting somebody. And so that's where a lot of the stories come from. They come from a little tiny piece of something that happened to me, and then I put him in Owly's world, and then I add a whole bunch of complications. And then what ends up with is the story at the end. So,
well, there is, particularly that one's my favorite, but they're always very charming and very well done. So
thank you very much.
You have all of your books are going to be reprinted by Scholastic, right?
That's correct.
And they're all going to be colored now. And then you have a new one, a wholly new story coming out as well.
I do. I have a. It's called. Let's see here. I've got it in progress. I'm still working on it actually. So the plan after I finished my contract with Top Shelf, I was going to renew it, but I wanted to try to do this myself, and I wanted to do like a Kickstarter, and I didn't get it done in time to really do that. And Kickstarters kind of went out of fashion, because everybody kind of got burned by a lot of stuff. And they're still around, but they don't have that energy that they used to, where people would just jump on it. And the idea of having printed all these books and then having to distribute them and everything like that, after a while, I kind of realized that wasn't the way to go. But this is the beginnings of the new Owly story. And it's called Owly: A Fishy Situation. And it's I'm really excited about it. And the thing is that I'm going to here's Owly. They're checking out. They have like a little water garden. Anyways, he's eating his little sandwich. But but yeah, it's I love drawing these stories, and so I'm really excited about that one. And the thing is, I haven't gotten to it yet. I haven't finished it because with all the versions from Scholastic, I'm doing a lot of editing. And mainly I'm cleaning up mistakes that I've made. Like, a lot of this time, like I just finished book 2, so it's all done. And that was the first time I had ever used a brush to ink anything ever when I did that book. And so I had to go through and just kind of fix a lot of stuff that was just kind of unprofessional. Now I look at it, because that was 2004, so 15 years ago that book came out. So it was time to fix some. And so that's what I'm doing with all of them. I'm adding some words, and I'm editing them, and I'm coloring them. And the process takes a long time. It takes almost a year per book to do that, but I only have about 6 months per book. So I have to cram all of that into that short amount of time. But yeah, making it work. But I'm excited because I think the neat thing about working with Scholastic is, like I've lived these stories. I've had these stories with me for a long time, and now they're being looked at by my editors, and they have a totally fresh set of eyes on them, And so when they really like it, it's like, oh wow, I guess it held up okay. But then there's other parts where, like, I drew something and Owly was kind of like looking down, like he's trying to think about something, and they have a little editorial note on the side, like, is Owly looking for something in that? And I'm like, no. So they get confused sometimes. And so that's good, because that means that everybody that reads it could have that problem. And so those fresh eyes help me make it better. So.
Are you working mostly digitally now, or are you?
Yeah. So I use, sorry, my little dog is in, this is Gizmo. Say hello, Gizmo. He's very needy. He's like, "What are you doing?" So he's been pawing at me for a while, but I just had to pick him up. Hey, no time for playing right now. I've got another dog who loves blankets, and so Gizmo loves to stand on the other dog's blankets, and they get upset.
Uh-oh.
So, anyways, I'm sorry. So yeah, no, I use Photoshop is what I use for all of my work. That's what I use, and I've used Photoshop since like 1994, and so I've used it for years and years, and so that's the thing I love to use, and I feel like I feel like the tool kind of disappears. And I can get exactly what I'm looking for when I use Photoshop. So that's the best part about it.
So your first book is already out with Scholastic, new edition of Long Way Home. The second one, is it going to just go in the order that you originally published them?
Yeah. The plan is every 6 months to have a new one. So the next one comes out in September, but things have changed a lot. And so I'm not really sure what the plan is full on, because there's a lot of other things that we don't really think about. There's the people that have to print the books, like in the factories. There's the people that have to deliver them. There's the people that have to stock them. There's there's actually the paper that has to be made that has to then be used to print the books. All of that stuff is kind of broken down in a lot of ways. Some of that stuff is done overseas, and so they're kind of getting back on track, but it's going to be a while before a lot of these books. I'm not really sure, and they have to prioritize a lot of that stuff too. Like there's a new Hunger Games book coming out, so that's going to get more. That's a little bit more important than Owly, but we just have to roll with it and see what they can do. So.
Well, for me, the new Owly book is way more important than the new
That's more important.
President Snow prequel book, but that's just me. But I think a lot of people feel that way.
Who cares? We know how he dies. Who cares?
Yeah. It's Kiefer Sutherland's dad. He dies. Who cares?
That's right. Oh, are they going to get Kiefer Sutherland to play him in the prequel? That would be cool.
Oh, I think even Kiefer is even too old to play him, because I think he's a teen in the new books.
I guess you're right. I still think of him as in the Lost Boys. I still think he's that same age in my mind forever.
Yeah. If only he was ageless and just continued to rock that greasy mullet, I think that it would be magical.
There'd be downsides, There's always downsides to being a vampire, but what do you do?
Yeah. Well, what's your website address?
It is andyrunton.com, and you can find all kinds of stuff there. It's I've got some Owly videos, and I've got all the old Owly Free Comic Book Day books. If you want to read them, they're free. And I thought I had them over here, but there was too many. But so I've got every copy of those. They're all online, and so there's 10 years of Free Comic Book Day stories there, and those are all original stories. That was the thing that was always tough for Free Comic Book Days. I always wanted to make it something special for everybody that they had never seen. So if they were Owly fans already, they had something new, and if they'd never seen Owly, they had something new too. But so I'm really proud of those little stories. But it was also really hard to come up with something for Owly to learn. He's got to learn a lot of stuff. After a while, he knows a lot of things, but just kind of keep trying to. The thing is that our lives we learn stuff every day, and so that's what you have to really do is just kind of slow down and realize, okay, what kind of lesson is happening here, and so but yeah, so yeah, you can find all that stuff on my websites.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. And I'm so excited that you have this multi-book deal, and we're going to get Owly on the regular as soon as things get worked out. So
yeah, that's the plan. So every 6 months, a brand new book, and the idea, that I'm coloring them and trying to keep up as fast as I can. This is actually giving me a little bit of extra time to finish some of them, because I'm on book 3 now. So it's funny. It's like I'm halfway done already, almost. And so it kind of moves fast, but then it makes me realize, people that, when you see actors talk about stuff, they acted in that months ago, and somebody's asking about it now at an interview, and that's the same kind of thing with me. I'm like, what was, oh yeah, that was, I did that. And now, because with independent comics, I did it, and like I sent the files right to the printer, and then it was in the stores, you know. So Scholastic, it takes a lot longer for them to get all the stuff in the pipeline and everything. But it's fun because there's so many people working to get it out there to kids and to promote it. And they love comics, so it's just been great. It's been great.
That's wonderful. They have an imprint, graphics, right?
That's right. And I think they started that in about like 2006 or 5 or 6. And that was their first big get was the Bone series, you know. And so that was something that they really wanted to bring out, and they believed in coloring something like that and bringing it out. And it was interesting. They really valued Owly the way that they, just like Bone. And I really couldn't believe it, because I'd always admired them, but I never felt like Owly was ready for that. But they said it was. And so it's been really nice.
That's wonderful. Well, I think we're out of time today. But thank you so much for talking with me. And yes, it was just great to talk to you. Sorry.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's great to see you. It's like human contact with somebody.
Well, we'll be back to doing crafts together and singing real soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. But again, we've got to come up with something new every time, right? We never like to repeat.
Yeah, I mean, we've done clothespins, we've done puppets of various kinds.
Paper bag puppets, everything.
Not the puffballs.
Puffballs didn't work out.
Puffball Owlies. I did a demo of the run through, and it was real bad. And no one
try a lot of things. Some things end up on the cutting room floor. That's okay. That's okay. You got to try. So.
Okay. So
well,
I'll
you,
talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.